So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ann Olazabal, the interim dean here at the Miami Herbert Business School. Very pleased to welcome you to the Future of Leadership series that we co-host here with McKinsey's Miami office. This is Andre Dua, who's going to just introduce himself, and then we'll have a conversation with Brent Burns. So welcome.
Thanks, Ann. It's good to see everyone again. As some of you know, I recently came from New York. By recently, I mean nearly 5 years ago now. And actually, I was asking someone what I have to do to be considered a local. And I've discovered what it is. It's when you go to lunch and they ask you, would you like to order a coffee? You say, I'd like to have a cortadito, please. And that officially makes you more Miami than asking for a macchiato. So officially, I'm from Miami now. Well, listen, I'm excited to be sitting here with Brent Burns. Brent is the president and CEO of JM Family Enterprise. It's a privately held company with revenue now over $20 billion,
almost $21 billion this year.
Well over 5,000 associates. And it grew from a core business focused on Toyota dealerships into a much more diversified company. And Brent, I'll have you explain that in a minute, but it covers things like vehicle distribution and processing, financial services, finance and insurance products, retail sales, dealer technology, and some franchises also, actually. And I believe last year it was ranked number 22 in the largest private businesses in America. In Florida, there are just a couple companies bigger, probably Publix and Southern Glazers.
Yep.
So it's a very, very interesting business. And maybe as we get started, you can tell us a little bit more about this wide-ranging business. And maybe you can also say, just to put it in perspective, how many Toyotas did you sell last year?
Just a little short of 500,000. Literally in the U.S., 1 out of every 4 Toyotas is sold through our 177 I say we are truly partners, but they are independent franchisee dealers, 177 in the 5 Southeast states. And then we sell about 50% of Toyota's fleet. So this past year, we did 120,000 fleet vehicles and 350,000 retail wholesales. So dealers sold new vehicles.
Amazing.
So you've been at JM for 24 years now. You started as CFO, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe before that, but
yeah.
CFO in 2008, which maybe we can talk about just a little bit.
Sure.
Brought the company through some pretty tumultuous financial times, and then, made your way to CEO. Tell us a little bit about that journey and maybe a little bit about that experience in 2008.
Sure. So I'll start with how I got there. Life is built on relationships, and my JM family journey actually began in the late 80s. I was at Alamo Rent-A-Car. I bought every Toyota they would sell me, and so I got to know Southeast Toyota really well while I was there. Then was part of the founding of AutoNation. Most people don't realize this, but AutoNation was actually gestated inside of JM Family. And Jim Moran and Wayne Huizinga got together to launch it. And JM Family exited when they pivoted from a used car superstore that we didn't see as being competitive with our dealer base to a roll-up of new car franchises, which was competitive. And so AutoNation, or JM Family, exited the AutoNation investment at that point in time. So while I was at AutoNation, I worked with both the finance company, Southeast Toyota Finance, and with the insurance company, Jim Moran and Associates. So I hit the ground running. I actually, 2000, many of the students here probably weren't even born then, but we had this Y2K thing, and there was this new thing called the internet, and we were trying to figure out how to make that work. So I actually started as the vice president of the Office of the Web, which didn't last very long. I then wound up becoming kind of the interim chief information officer for a short while, and then this was all literally in the first 12 months of me being there. Moved over and started running the finance company, Southeast Toyota Finance, and then in 2008, Colin Brown, our CEO and now our chairman, I had my dream job. I loved what I was doing, but I loved the company more. And he said, I need that Wall Street experience and a firm hand to lead us through it. And so I moved into the CFO slot at the parent company at that point in time. And you know, for somebody that had grown up doing deals, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. In a normal world, anything can get done. It's just a question of structure and price. In 2008, there was just no bid. It was incredible. I mean, Toyota was a AAA credit, and they were rolling their commercial paper over every night because a AAA credit, even then, people didn't want to take risk any longer than they had to. So it was an unprecedented time, and hopefully a once in a lifetime, because I don't want to have to go through that again. But it forced us to really look at ourselves and say, we want to have a fortress balance sheet. We don't want to be dependent upon the market. We want to make sure that we're properly capitalized and structured. It also, I think, demonstrated what I think we learned it early, which is you don't have to be a public company to be fully capable of raising the capital and having the potential to grow. And I think that's kind of taken for granted now because private equity has become as ubiquitous as it is, and so the whole idea that you had to be a public company, and I've been in public companies before, you know, the trade-offs to me aren't worth it. If you've got the ability to access capital, there's a lot to be said for being in the private markets and being able to lay out a long-term strategy and then execute against that strategy without having to chin to an every 90-day report card. Sat in that role to 2014, then became the chief operating officer, then added president, and then in 18 added CEO to the title. It's I couldn't be more proud to lead 5,000 phenomenal associates and continue the trajectory and continue the work that Jim Moran started all those years ago. So,
what a journey.
Yeah, it's been great.
Brent, can I pick up on that point? I'd like to go a little deeper on this issue of public versus private ownership, because I think this is one of the big trends of the last kind of decade or two, where private equity is owning more assets, where companies are going private, where there are perceived to be a lot of challenges related to being a publicly traded company. So I'd love to get, you've obviously seen many sides of this. What are your reflections on that? What do you think that means, for the economy?
I think that the public world just forces a fair amount of short-termism. Now, having said that, and we are as an insurance company, we have lots of float. We have a big balance sheet. We have a $30 billion balance sheet. We are big investors in private equity as both a limited partner as well as co-investors with them on any number of deals. It's not perfect. You know, I actually, when we're looking to control invest, I love to recruit either the existing management or the founding families by saying, get off the treadmill, because the beauty of private equity is it's a longer window than that 90-day window, but it is a window because those funds are limited in term, and those investors, and I'm bipolar on this because as an LP, I want my IRR and I want my money back.
Yeah.
With a return, but that inherently means that you're trying to transform incredibly quickly so that you can trade again. And as a private equity investor, trading amongst themselves can sometimes hide a problem. Sometimes it makes sense to have it go from a middle market firm to, a Blackstone or a
Right.
KKR that's a bulge bracket firm that can take them to the next level. So those growth-oriented changes make sense to me, but it can also encourage bad behavior. I got a dog in the portfolio. I'll take your dog if you take my dog.
Right.
So it's not a perfect world, but I do believe that the sense of urgency is very real. The transformative nature of what they're trying to do is very real. And in many respects, the public market would have a harder time consuming and understanding the long-term nature of that transformation that's taking place. I think so. In some respects, I think being public forces you to be a little more incremental, and it can be
Incremental because you can't get the same short-term performance bump. If you're doing a transformation, you need some time for it to play out.
You need time, as well as how do you explain to the market?
Yep.
You've got to convince those analysts, and and then the Me Too nature of whoever your coverage cohort is. Everybody has to do all the things that cohort says that sector needs to have. So it homogenizes and almost punishes a differentiated strategy in some respects. And that's not a criticism on the coverage model, because I think it does a lot of good things and it holds management teams accountable. But it's clear that you can raise the capital in the private markets effectively, and that's evolved. I was personally involved at Alamo, and then at JM Family, they literally did the first lease securitization back in the 90s. And so you look at the maturity of those ABS markets. We go to market 6 to 8 times a year and raise in any given year, kind of $6 to $10 billion. Supported by great Toyotas and great Toyota customers, whether it be a retail installment contract or a lease. So no limitation there. We have a who's who, bank group that is always hopeful that we'll have more needs, and we're and we know that they're there if we need them to be. So, it does show you the efficiency of the markets, be they private or public.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talked about innovation and speed and your ability to be more nimble, perhaps. but you're also leading an impressive array of businesses under the JM family umbrella. Let me just read off the list here for our audience. Not only is it Southeast Toyota Distributors, which you mentioned, but Southeast Toyota Finance, JM&A Group, Home Franchise Concepts, Futura Title and Escrow, and more, right? How do you lead such a broad array of organizations and create a shared vision?
Well, if you listen to that, you might think I've got ADD, but there is actually a core that ties all the pieces together, and I do sometimes underestimate. Stephen Nessie, who was our long-term PwC partner, and most people don't know this, but even private companies, they have a rotation requirement at 10 years, and so he was having to rotate off, and it was like, Stephen, it's like 6 months, 9 months. How hard can it be to find a new partner? And the point kind of hit me. He says, you're a world-class distributor, you're a bank, you're an insurance company, and effectively you're a private equity firm. Now, having grown up there and I've been part of the birthing of many of the elements of that, I never really thought of it in those terms. But I will come back to the core that undergirds all of that is our culture. And then everything is built upon the culture and the associates that really drive those businesses. And then I'll put them together because it's all customer centric. So Southeast Toyota is the distributor. We are on contract from Toyota, the franchisor. Technically Toyota is, but they've contracted to us as the distributor for those 177 dealers. Those dealers at one point in their past had a challenge financing their vehicles, and so we created Southeast Toyota Finance to be a finance company, but their role in life is to be a partner of both Southeast Toyota and our dealers so that capital and credit is never an inhibitor to either the dealership or to their consumers. And so hence that piece of the puzzle. And then consumers said, these vehicles are increasingly complex and expensive to repair, and I would like to have insurance products that would address those concerns, whether it be an extended service contract, whether it be gap protection for the difference between the payoff on the vehicle and the collateral value, whether it be road hazard tire, a whole host of products that support that. So that suite is what we support and work in a B to B to C business model in the core of everything that we do. Now, we have a transportation business. We'll do $800 million worth of parts sales this year in support of that business. It's a little niche that's bolted on to the fact that we're going to wholesale 360,000 vehicles, and if they can build them, we'll wholesale 400,000 vehicles, plus the fleet business. So that's the core of what we've got. We then, from a diversification perspective, said the culture will undergird everything that we do. We're already in the garage. The logical next step, so the vehicle is the second biggest purchase. The logical next place would be the home. And so Home Franchise Concepts became kind of the linchpin. It sounds different. We are the franchisor.
So you're going to buy Lennar next?
You see, the theme there, though, is we're in the business of empowering those franchisees to serve their customer base. And so those diversified acquisitions were really driven off of that core culture that undergirds everything, and then laying on top of it. Futura Title and Escrow, a business that we acquired recently. Everything that Futura and Title title and escrow does in the home purchase is done in the finance and insurance office of a dealership. It's the same products, it's just a different product that is part of that transactional process. It's high frequency, low severity insurance products. We know and understand that. It's a culture that undergirds everything that we do, so it's really tightly connected. We added national truck protection, which is essentially, we're really good at the Class 1 vehicle side of the equation. National truck protection does all the things that Jim Moran and Associates does, except they do it in the Class 2 through 8 trucking side, primarily in Class 8 independent trucking operators. So it sounds really diverse, but we're leveraging the culture and the core competencies that we've got for a different product or a different industry.
Makes sense now.
Very comfortable for us.
Okay, so Brent has mentioned culture a few times. And one of the things I think that's really interesting is, obviously the name of the company is JM Family, but maybe it's worth going back a little in history to just explain. Who knows what the JM stands for? Jim Moran, right. So, we had the opportunity to talk a little bit before. This is a true legend in the automotive industry. I'm going to ask Brent in a moment how that influences this company to this day. But just to give a sense, before he started JM Family Enterprises, which started with the Southeast Toyota dealerships, first he had the biggest Hudson brand dealership in America. That became, in the end, the biggest Ford dealership in America. And eventually he moved to Florida after getting cancer and getting the biggest Pontiac dealership in America. So that by the time JM started, there was really already this history and this legacy. But what I wanted to ask you, Brent, is what legacy did Jim leave for the company, and how does that still influence the company? And in a way, what's it like to follow a legend like that? Because there's this incredible endowment that he's left the company in a way that clearly still influences the culture. Yeah,
I mean, every day I always try to hold myself to a standard that says, would he, and I had the good fortune of being able to work directly with Mr. Moran and to learn from him and hold myself to that standard of, is this the way that he would do it, and would he be proud of it? And you mentioned that JM. There were a handful of times that I brought an idea that at the time probably seemed a little crazy. And he would say to me, if your name was on the building, would you do that? And so don't do anything that you wouldn't be proud of. And I use that same line with my 30-something-year-old children that about their life and their career. Be proud of everything that you do, and take ownership of everything that you do. I think he would be incredibly proud of the company that we continue to grow and be, because we have undergirded everything that we do with those cultural principles that he taught us. And he just had an incredible, I always say that most people believe that life is an either-or situation. You can do this or you can do that. He lived life in a both-and mode. And that culture is the convergence of what you do and how you do it. I was telling these guys earlier today, it's like the difference between swimming and diving. And diving, it's the physical part of it, but there's also the style points that you get. And we believe that cultural side of things, that you are embracing the culture that we're all about, is critical, and it creates that synergy and that cohesiveness that allows a team that may not have the best athletes to collectively achieve more than anybody else. I'll use a sports metaphor. I'm a FAU grad. March Madness is always a great example. If you took the individual rankings of FAU's men's basketball team that wound up being number 2 last year, I'm sure they would have been in the bottom 50 of the 100 teams that were there, and yet they collectively created something that was greater than the sum of the parts. And we believe that culture allows us to do that. And strategy is important, execution is important, but culture eats all of those things for lunch. And you know what you can expect and depend upon from your teammates. And you know, I think that's just an incredibly important piece of the puzzle.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in shifting a little bit to the automotive industry in particular, and it seems like it's in such transition right now with...
I love it.
Right?
It's a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Electrification and subscription models and new OEMs entering the ecosystem and increasing complexity of the vehicles themselves with the digital components. So much transition. How do you lead that portion of your business with this kind of marketplace?
Partners, people, product. Got the best partner in the world with Toyota. They have the fortress balance sheet and the wherewithal and the long-term vision to be able to play this multi-pathway strategy that they've been on, whereas the domestics have essentially said we are going to skip straight to BEV. Unfortunately, we have a government that is picking winners and losers and wanting to force a BEV solution. And I'm not opposed to BEV in any way, shape, or form. I just think that, one, the marketplace should determine who wins, and two, it's a naive approach to a very long-term transformation that has a host of other viable options. First and foremost, you've got hybrid, where much less dependence upon the battery and the minerals because the battery is smaller, and yet if you can get 50 miles to the gallon, you produce much less carbon, and carbon is the enemy. We're focused on a powertrain, and the issue is carbon reduction. And so if you can get 50 miles to the gallon in a clean burning engine, the carbon emission and the footprint of building that vehicle is so much more efficient than the average age of a vehicle on the road today. In the US is the oldest it's ever been. It's 12.5 years. So most of those 12.5-year-old average vehicles are probably getting about 15 miles to the gallon. So just think about the lift that you get by going hybrid. If you then go plug-in hybrid, again, a little bigger battery, a little more mineral consumption, but still incredibly efficient. My daughter-in-law is a school teacher with a 2-year-old. Her commute is, I think, about 20 miles. The RAV4 Prime that she drives, she plugs in every night, is less than, it's got a 45-mile range, and she basically uses the battery all the time. I have to remind her, exercise the engine every now and again. But if she wants to go to Orlando, she's got almost 400 miles of gasoline range on that plug-in hybrid. BEV is clearly going to evolve. We still have a chemistry issue that everybody's trying to solve with density and charging speed and mineral consumption and weight and infrastructure, and it will get there. And Toyota has been dogmatically saying, we believe that solid state will be scalable by 2030, and they're trying to bring that in. If we get to solid state, then you get the density issue, you get the recharge time, you make huge progress, and they're on a path where they're going to do that. They're spending $14 billion in North Carolina to manufacture their own batteries here in the U.S. for both plug-ins as well as full battery electric. And they still very much are all in on hydrogen in that multi-pathway approach. They are producing fuel cells that PACCAR and Peterbilt will begin to incorporate into their over-the-road trucks. Part of the challenge with BEVs is the weight of the batteries, and most people don't consider that. I always chuckle when you hear all the press about Tesla doing this over-the-road truck with Pepsi, because the weight of the battery is heavier than many of the bridges can actually handle. So I would just submit that I think they're going to haul Frito-Lay, not Pepsi itself, because if you put load on top of a heavy battery, you've got a real issue. So I think that multi-pathway, we need to get our infrastructure right, and think about it, 12 and a half years. The park in the U.S. is actually the same. The park, meaning the number of vehicles that are in service, is essentially 1-to-1, which is pretty amazing when you consider all the kids that aren't driving age yet. So, we've got plenty of vehicles. It will take a long period of time, and hence that multi-pathway approach that I think Toyota is professing, and they've got the wherewithal to do that. There's also, continuing work being done on hydrogen combustion. Akio Toyoda is a race car driver when he's not the chairman. If you want to see his eyes light up, and when he talks about combustible hydrogen, he says it burns so hot and it is so fast that he loves the opportunity there. But that's an infrastructure problem, just like battery electric charging is an infrastructure problem. There's only a handful of hydrogen charge stations out there. So,
I mean, maybe just related to what's going on in the industry, can you say a little bit about where you think dealerships are headed? Because obviously there is some innovation in the model around more direct to consumer, the Tesla model, different kinds of ways in which used cars are being sold, like Caravana and things like that. If we look kind of ahead 20 years, what do you think is the role of the dealership in the ecosystem, and how's that going to evolve?
Well, you will not get fair and balanced here. We are decidedly dealer-centric in everything that we do, and thankfully Toyota is as well. Having said that, I believe, I get back to, it's the second biggest purchase that people make. It's one thing for Tesla to have a model when you look at the demographic of their customer base, and you look at the fact that most of the early adopters that they've had, it was not a primary vehicle. It was a second, third, fourth vehicle in the garage. When it's your daily driver, what role does the dealer play? They sell you the vehicle. They trade in, take the trade. They put a value on that vehicle. They provide the financing. They provide the title and registration services to you, and they assist in obtaining insurance. When you take the dealer out of the mix, it becomes a much more complex version of things. And so We believe that a dealer-centric model where they are very customer-focused and meet the customer where they want to be met. So to the Carvana, fully digital side of the equation, our dealers need to have an online store and allow their consumers to do as much or as little and respect everything that they've done online when they get in. But it's still that second biggest purchase, and there's no substitute for a test drive and no substitute for an informed sales associate helping to explain the features and the benefits and the options and where you go, as opposed to somebody who may not know all the nuance that's just trying to either configure or pick in a digital world. So we believe that a great dealer body, our dealers are the highest volume, most profitable dealers in the country. We are going to do everything that we can to support and enhance their ability to deliver that great service. It's difficult to do it in a digital-only mode. Equally true, they can't say, I'm only in a physical world. In the 177, we don't have anybody views their life as being physical only.
Yep.
It's a mixed world, and you've got to let people do as much or as little as they want. I will say that during the height of COVID, it drove consumers to that online world very quickly, and we're now seeing some of those consumers move back to in-person, or doing more of it in person.
Just like talent.
I was just going to say that leads me directly to the question of sort of talent strategy and workforce trends, and in a virtual world, how are you managing that?
Yeah, so our associates are our most important resource, and recruiting, retaining the best and the brightest is foremost. We have 5,000 associates, not employees. This was a Jim Moranism. He says, I don't have people that work for me, I have people I work with. And that shows you, what his approach was. And he always said that the two most important words that you can say are thank you. That gets back to that cultural element of things. So we want to recruit and retain the best. It's clear that giving people the flexibility to be able to work from home when it makes sense. But as we all discussed, I started in the consulting world at KPMG. It was then, I think it's less so now, but I think it maybe is going back. It was an apprenticeship model. You went to your client, you had that pecking order of leadership that you were learning from and growing from, and we believe there's no substitute for that. We have any number of production-related roles that are impossible to process vehicles, to process parts, to the trucking side of the equation where you're doing the logistics. There's no virtual way to do that, but we have plenty of other roles that can be, some of which are actually more productive in a virtual environment. But I believe that culture can only become inculcated by having people be together, and the spontaneity and the mentorship and the apprentice nature of so much of the work that we do is augmented by all of that. I mean, we talked about this morning. I have a number of teams, skip level meetings that I do each week that are a byproduct of the COVID world. Retain them. One, it takes away the geographical limitations, so I can reach out to a salesperson that is in a different part of the country, or to one of our production centers that's in another place in the southeast, et cetera. So the geographic side of things is a benefit, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever the case may be. Actually, the accountability of people, and you can't hide. We expect the video to be on so that you can see the reaction that you're getting and the engagement that you get. It's a substitute, but it's a poor substitute for doing it together. And so even in those knowledge worker roles that could, in theory, be done virtually, we have all hands days at least 1 or 2 days a week. And even our technology folks, they find an immense benefit in having those teams be physically located together. Which is not to say, I had a call, we have a machine learning data scientist that started with us here, and she moved for family reasons, and she lives in Denver, and she was on one of the calls. It's not like we have an office in Denver, but she does come back to connect with her team and whatnot. So there's gives and takes, and but no substitute for in person. And we have, as I was mentioning, we've got an awesome campus that is really conducive to collaboration.
So just maybe switching a little bit, Brent, to the industry. There's kind of a dizzying array of things going on. You've got, as you said, a lot of government involvement in, sort of almost industry policy for the car industry related to, powertrains and that kind of thing. You've got, I think, the increasing conversation about the U.S. manufacturing base and the role of the car industry in that, and there's been much more regionalization of supply chains globally. You've got different business models, rideshare, all of that. There's lots of innovation around the product, autonomous vehicles, and so on. So as you kind of maybe just look ahead, what is your outlook or view of where the car industry is going over the next decade or two?
If you had asked me in 2018, the industry prognosticators would have said, the most transformational force was going to be autonomy. And that has proven to be a more vexing challenge than anybody anticipated. I'm not suggesting that I don't think we won't have autonomy in the future, but it's had a really bad year this year. The Cruise accident just showed the risk inherent in it, and as much as AI has the potential to help, it's so complex. So I'll give you an example. I am blessed to have about a 7-mile commute up A1A. I need to count it. There's probably 15 crosswalks on that. Some of them are the more modern ones where you push the button and the lights tell everybody that the person's crossing, but they all, state law says you must stop and give right of way to the pedestrian. There's a moment in every encounter that I have as a driver that I don't know how an algorithm will ever catch that. I'm looking at you as the pedestrian, you're looking at me, and we agree I'm going to stop. And my agreement
it's a negotiation.
is conditional upon making sure that the person behind me is going to be able to stop and not hit me and knock me into you as you're crossing the road. I'm a huge technology believer. I'm not sure how that use case effectively gets solved. And that's the challenge in an urban environment. Now, having said that, ADAS, or Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, are already at the point where if I'm not stopping and you're walking out, my car will stop itself because the sonar and the technology that is in it. And that technology will continue to grow and evolve. And, this is one where, the wisdom of Toyota is, first Akio, the race driver, is like, who wouldn't want to drive? So he's not a huge, let's hand it to the machine, because he thinks that even though they're on a path to be able to do that, but they've said ADAS is not optional. So we're going to put all of our advanced driver assistance systems in every vehicle that we've got in the lineup. And each succeeding model, we're on version 3 dot something of ADAS. And so we can have a much safer roadway. Back to your broader point, powertrain is going to matter. Having spent a decade in the car rental business, when Hertz made the front page with their partnership with Tesla, I had to scratch my head because, range anxiety is a real thing when you are a local driver and you know where everything is. If you are either a commercial driver in a city that is not home, or a tourist,
it's much worse.
I scratched my head and said, how's that going to work? And I think they've had the bruising realization that that's the case. And we see it in our dealer lots today. The industry is running about a 45 or 50-day supply of vehicles. The BEV day supply is closer to 100. So the consumer is only partially ready for battery electric.
Although there was probably some overproduction on the part of the OEMs.
For sure.
Yeah.
No question about that. And it's all premium products, so there's not a low-end battery electric solution that's out there, which I come back to. Plug-in and hybrid is a logical way for us to proceed. I really believe that in the long run, hydrogen will wind up being the heavy-duty trucking and over-the-road solution. So it's an exciting time to be in the industry, and watching as these technological forces, whether it be powertrain or autonomy / ADAS, and then the different business models that those beget, creates a real opportunity. But I ultimately come back to, partners, great manufacturer in Toyota, the best dealers in the business, and great people. That's a competitive differentiator that is going to be the difference maker.
Well, it won't come as any surprise then that JM Family is one of those organizations that's really committed to strengthening the communities in which you operate, in which your associates live and work. And you're personally pretty involved in Broward County. I have a list of things that you've done. You sit on the board of the Boys and Girls Club in Broward. You're a lifetime board member for Kids in Distress, and you've served as co-chair of the Habitat for Humanity of Broward CEO Builds. Tell me about this. I mean, you've talked a little bit about culture. Maybe we didn't have enough time to really talk about how that operates inside, but you're making a statement.
Yeah. I'll back it up and say that it kind of connects to this business model that Jim Moran had this vision for, which is start at the customer. Don't just meet the customer's expectations, but actually exceed the customer's expectations. Build your business model to successfully deliver on that first part. And that business model includes allowing your most important resource, your associates, to participate in the success that you generate, and allows the Moran family to benefit from the success of that business. But then we have to be a great citizen, and we have to give back to the communities that we live and work in. And we do that through the Jim Moran Foundation. We do that through our corporate philanthropy. We don't like to have our associates just give to a United Way campaign, and I'm proud to say that we had an all-time high penetration this year. I think 68% of our associates contributed to United Way. But we always focus on you can give your treasure, but it's really more impactful if you'll give your time and your talent too. So, you know, you go to Feeding South Florida, where we are a huge supplier there. They will tell you that our process engineers have come in and allowed them to increase their throughput almost 400% since we began being involved with them. And so give back to those communities that you live and work in. It serves two purposes. One, you're building a stronger employment base for you to draw upon, but you're also giving back to that community, which creates those great customers. That was the place that we started it all at. So it's a very purposeful circle that really works well. We're proud not just of what we give, but the boards that our associates serve on, how involved we can be. For anybody that's a corporate leader out there, I will tell you, I don't know that there's a better team building exercise than a Habitat for Humanity house. You see work ethic, you see teamwork, you see engagement, and you gain an appreciation. And as we talked about earlier today, workforce housing is an incredibly huge challenge and issue for all of South Florida. And so we were building our latest 4 houses, which takes us to 47 that we've done in the last 20 years. And they had 35,000 applicants and 500 opportunities last year. So the need is incredible. And there's a Channel 7 did a story. One of the homeowners that we're building for is a single dad, which is a unique thing in and of itself. A bona fide hero. He lives in Broward, but he works in Dade County, and he teaches the transit authority bus drivers. This guy 3 years ago saw a car run into a canal and pulled over, hopped in, and pulled the family out of the sinking car. But having said that, he was living with other family members, and his children didn't have bedrooms, and so this is going to transform. What also made it incredibly impactful was one of our associates who participated in that build was a Habitat child in a home that we built in that prior 20 years. The other thing that was really cool was there was a Habitat associate that's just joined Broward. Not only is he a Habitat child himself, bona fide hero, a West Point grad, and a real athlete on top of it, who, when he left the service, said, I have to give back to this organization that gave me a pathway to that level of success. So, it's one thing if you're just writing a check, but when you get involved and you learn those stories, you can get really passionate. And I could wax on about Boys and Girls Club and the fact that in Broward County, the graduation rate in public schools is less than 50%, but Boys and Girls Club members have a 97% graduation rate. So talk about making a difference and providing a safe environment and teaching them life skills and how to be a good citizen. And so, if you want stories that will really tug at your heartstrings, Kids in Distress has got those stories in, so many different places. But it's one thing to just make a contribution. It's just so much, I think, more impactful if we can get our associates bought into how, whether it's toy drives or, painting a Boys and Girls Club or something where they get personally engaged in making our community a better place.
You make the point, though, that it's not just giving and engagement and opportunities for them to feel sort of a meaningful opportunity, but it also ties back to creating a better workforce in the area where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a business purpose ultimately that you proved the point with 2 cases, right, where
Yeah.
2 Habitat children ended up coming to work for you.
And it's funny how that level of ownership and camaraderie manifests itself too. So a number of years ago, we had a hurricane that did a lot of damage to associate homes, and so we researched and we found that the company could create a fund where we could actually vet the need and provide support if it was the fruits of a federally declared disaster. But we then looked at it and we said, is there a way that we can help beyond that? And we can't do it corporately because then it would be taxable income and it just gets complicated. But we said, well, what if we turn to our associates? And so we came up with AHA, which is Associates Helping Associates. And so we have our associates contribute, and so even if it's not a federally declared disaster, but it's a death in the family and they can't afford to bury somebody, or they can't afford to go to be at a funeral or a hospital visit that's out of state, or whatever the case may be. And our associates are fully engaged in giving to that. We've, in the last handful of years, our Associates Helping Associates, and it's all fully vetted, so it's legit. It can't be, I made a bad personal or financial choice and type of thing. We've collected, I think, $3.5 or $4 million and given out $2 million of it.
Wow.
And those are the kinds of impactful ways where you feel like you're, again, part of something bigger than just yourself.
Your culture's working.
It is. It is.
We had a lot more questions which we didn't get through, but I want to make sure that we have a chance to ask if anyone in the audience has any questions. Maybe we'll take 2 questions, maybe one in the back, and then one over here.
What's the first one?
Okay. Good morning. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And my name is Weishi. I'm a professor at Miami Business School. So I do research on corporate strategy and corporate governance. And so, of course, government enterprise has acquired a lot of companies over its history. And so after acquisition, firms, acquiring firm, you do the integration. How do you balance, making sure that acquiring business have enough autonomy and discretion, at the same time you make sure that acquiring business will uphold the value and culture of GM government enterprises?
Yeah, so great question. And for those of you that couldn't hear, it was, what's our philosophy and approach to integration? And we try not to be so prideful that we say you got to do it our way. We hope that we're learning and growing from everybody that we acquire, but we also think that we can give them access to talent and strategy and approaches that they might not otherwise get. And certainly if you look at our control investments in these diversified businesses, they're subscale to everything that we do. So we bring an immense amount, of value without actually going in, lift and shift to the cloud. Our IT team can give them world-class approach to how they're gonna take it there. Our center of excellence, gives them the opportunity to figure out how artificial intelligence might be applied. But undergirding all of that is our culture, and it was interesting because we have the JM Family Way, which is really how we've kind of codified what our culture is all about, and it gets back to that two-pronged approach where it's the what and the how side of the equation. We were so balanced internally on the how side of things because most of us grew up in the core auto businesses where the execution and the disciplines and everything were incredibly mature, and they were just kind of innately understood. But we realized with these acquisitions that they would look at it and it's like, you have this cascading series of objectives and tied into performance metrics, into pay plans, and a discipline and a structure. And so it forced us to go back and say, all right, the how is important, but the what and how we go about doing it needs to be flushed out more. And so we've really flushed that out more. And so perfect example of, as a new hire coming in, you don't have to think and deal with things through osmosis. We've tried to codify things and help them get up that learning curve really quickly on both the what and the how side of what we're doing.
Great. And over here.
Hi, Brent. My name's Justin Garb. I'm actually an intern at JM Family Enterprises. I work in the enterprise strategy team and also a master's student at UM.
So did I get it right or not?
You did. My question is, what advice, you talked a lot about culture, what advice would you give to a young professional who's looking to contribute to that type of culture you mentioned?
Yeah. It's funny. We often say that your career is a lattice, not a ladder. And I'm a perfect example of that. I always say, I can't keep a job because I've bounced around and I've done a lot of things, but I sit there and I look at the different roles that I've had. So, when I was on the consulting side of things, it's all about the customer, but it's also all about having a great team. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny, my son was in the consulting business for a while, and he's like, well, how do you make sure you got the best people? And, do you look at their reviews, or what do you do? And I told him, I said, well, if you really want to cut through it, look at their chargeability, because the people that are good are always in demand and they're never really available. That will tell you. I'm sure you have the same issue there, but so it's being able to look at that that approach to it, and it's just it's not managing a career progression. It's how do I deliver and add as much value as I possibly can? How can I be a selfless servant leader that is building relationships and teams? I always laugh and say, I only applied for one job in my life, and that was when I graduated from FAU, picking the consulting firm that I was going to go to. I have so much fun with PwC because at that time it was the Big Eight, and they were one of the only two that didn't provide me with an offer. So I tell them I don't hold that against them, but So, and then the thing that I say this to my children all the time is make sure that your body of work is always something that you're going to be proud of, not just today, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and and make sure that you're associated. And I'd like to believe that we are, an employer of choice and a destination that allows us to recruit more successfully. The internship program that you are participating in, I think we had 70 or 75 last year. I think it was like 15,000 applications for those 75 roles. We cast the net pretty wide, and so there's a lot that's bundled up in that, but you should always be able to look back with no regrets and feel like I can be proud of what I've done and the people that I've been associated with. And I've never had to find another job after that one because it was always a relationship. And, it was my client saying for 5.5 years, when are you going to come to work for us? It was the relationships that I built at JM Family that led to both AutoNation and then ultimately to JM Family itself.
I think that's probably a good moment to stop for this morning. One thing, Brent, thank you for coming. I'll just sort of say to everyone, my reflection on that is you can see the values throughout this entire discussion that you built your career on, the listening, the focus on other people's success, and the humility, and it's really a privilege to have had you come here and share your thoughts.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Brent.
My daughter's a grad, by the way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, for coming.